This is CBC Vancouver News.
We should not be afraid of being able to live our lives in either the online or offline worlds.
BC wants to make it easier to go after people who post intimate images without permission. One mother's fight after her daughter was victimized and took her own life.
I am very confident that our staff will get this budget right-sized.
And not as big as they thought. Surrey's hefty property tax increase could be a little less thanks to the province.
Like you've seen grown men cry, right? Because it's so cold and it's hard to watch.
Finding those who do not have a safe home.
We count people because people count.
The region's homelessness count begins, and advocates worry those numbers will be higher. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. BC wants to make it easier to target people who post intimate images without permission. It would also make it easier for victims to sue for compensation. As Mira Baines reports, a mother who lost her daughter after she was extorted applauds the move.
If she were alive to see and hear us, she would certainly be grinning down upon us and cheering loudly as change is made.
The mother of Amanda Todd, a 15-year-old Coquitlam girl who died by suicide, has been advocating for tougher laws against cyberbullying since her daughter died in 2012. She had made a video on YouTube using flashcards that detailed the abuse she experienced and the harmful effects. A decade later, a 44-year-old Dutch man was convicted of sexually extorting her. It's already an offense to publish intimate images without consent under the Criminal Code of Canada. This new law will help tackle the issue from a civil standpoint.
A devastating form of sexualized violence that disproportionately impacts young people, women, girls, and gender-diverse people.
Attorney General Nikki Sharma says the legislation will be fast-tracked and retroactive as of today. And the battle to take down these types of images online from websites or social media apps will also go online. The government plans to set up an online portal so even younger people can easily report the abuse. The cases will be dealt with by the Civil Resolutions Tribunal, making the process faster as time matters.
You can have a turnaround very quickly where a decision maker comes on, listens to your evidence, determines that it's non-consensual disclosure of intimate images, and issues an order to get that pulled down.
Victims will also have an avenue so they can claim compensation from people who shared their photos without permission. Todd describes another disturbing trend in online abuse.
Globally, we're hearing about sextortion and sextortion with boys, minor child youth boys.
She says boys are being targeted for money while girls are being asked for more sexualized images. The new law also allows for consequences against people who threaten to expose images, and the problem is getting worse.
But what is actually totally unacceptable is that 50% of the notices we send are on known images that those companies have previously removed.
The only other provinces that have similar laws include Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Prince Edward Island. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
Investigators are trying to figure out how and why a BC woman died in Mexico. A Canadian man has been arrested in connection with her death. Now her family is anxious to get her body home. The victim's family identifies her as 23-year-old Kiara Agnew of Dawson Creek. Mexican prosecutors said the victim was found dead at a hotel just south of Cancun on Friday. She was there with her boyfriend at the time. Agnew's family says she grew up in the New Brunswick village of Plaster Rock and moved to Dawson Creek when she was a teenager. They say she loved to travel, loved animals, and was about to celebrate her birthday. A fundraiser to help bring her body back to Canada has now raised more than $23,000.
The most important thing is, first and foremost, to get Kiara home, but then also to get her justice because she deserves.
A tweet from a Mexican police force stated that a foreign national is being investigated for the crime of femicide in a community within the Mayan Riviera. It's unclear if the man has a lawyer. Global Affairs Canada says it's aware of a Canadian citizen's death and the detention of another in Mexico. It is providing assistance. Back in this country, homicide investigators are looking into the death of a man whose body was found near a high school in Maple Ridge on Saturday morning. Police say the body of 55-year-old Surinderjeet Singh was found in a parking lot close to Maple Ridge Secondary School. His rented car was later found near Dewdney Trunk Road and Acadia Street, less than a kilometre south. It's not yet clear how he died, though it is deemed suspicious and not linked to gangs. A record-high tax proposal for the city of Surrey may now lose some of its sting. The city is backing down from the proposed increase of 17.5%, which would have paid for, among other things, 2 police departments. New provincial funding has changed that equation. For more, we turn to our municipal affairs reporter, Justin McElroy, at City Hall in Surrey. Justin, what are taxpayers looking at now?
Yeah, well, Dan, it was going to be $460 increase for the average Surrey property tax bill next year. Now it's looking at about $280. Still significant, though much less. And as you said, the big reason why is what the provincial government announced just last Friday. They created essentially a built-in dollar community fund because they have such a large surplus this year they have to get rid of. On Friday, they announced how much money every municipality in the province would get from that. They said Surrey would get $90 million of that. And Mayor Brenda Locke said it then became pretty easy to decide what that could get spent on.
I am very confident that our staff will get this budget right-sized, and again, really grateful that the province has provided those dollars to, and at such a perfect time. Literally 3 days before we had to deliver the budget, they came up with that money. So we appreciate that a lot.
So as a result, after hearing from the public today, Council voted to send the budget back to staff to figure out how to integrate that $90 million in and how to make the maximum property tax increase 12.5% instead of 17.5%.
It is a reduction, Justin, but 12.5% is still a significant tax increase.
Oh, certainly, not just for the city of Surrey historically, but across Metro Vancouver this year, in what is a year where many municipalities are facing big increases due to inflation. Here is a chart. It looks at all of the municipalities in the region that have either passed or proposed their budgets thus far, and you can see Surrey still, even with that 5% reduction, right at the top of the list. Now, the big reason for all that money is they have 2 police forces right now that they're spending money on. It's costing them an extra $8 million a month, the city of Surrey estimates. Now, of course, Mayor Brenda Locke would like the province to allow them to get rid of the Surrey Police Force and keep the RCMP detachment. A decision on that by the province is imminent, but no matter what happens this year, they're stuck with winding down one police service or the other, so this high tax increase will go forward. Just a question of when and how much.
Justin McElroy at Surrey City Hall. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Dan.
Police across BC have joined forces with ICBC on a month-long blitz targeting distracted drivers. The education and enforcement campaign comes as the insurer says nearly 40% of police-reported crashes are caused by distracted drivers, and it plays a role in nearly 80 deaths every year. A distracted driving ticket can cost you penalty points and fines of nearly $600. Drivers with 2 convictions for using an electronic device within 3 years could be hit with up to $2,000 in fines and penalties, on top of any car insurance premiums. A man from Hudson's Hope has been fined $7,500 more than 2 years after Mounties found a caged black bear cub on his property. In 2020, Justin Thibault was charged with unlawful possession of live wildlife under the BC Wildlife Act. Officers arrived at Thibault's home to arrest him for dangerous driving and theft when they spotted the animal in the cage. The bear was believed to be 6 to 8 months old at the time. He was taken to the Northern Lights Wildlife Shelter to recover and named Rock. The society says Rock was released the following summer, healthy and happy. With the cost of groceries expected to increase through this year, United Way of BC is trying to streamline how it gets food to families in need. It's developed an app that will allow volunteers to deliver food in communities across the province. John Hernandez has more.
Each time these price tags climb, it puts even more pressure on BC's most vulnerable.
Especially families with younger children or single-parent families, but also seniors. The services are available, but we know that there is a surge and some of them might have a wait list.
According to the United Way, about 15% of British Columbians are considered food insecure. That finding echoed by Food Banks BC, which says demand at local food banks has swelled upwards of 60% in some cases cases. Sabova says there's enough food to go around. It's just a matter of getting it to the right place.
It's been a huge gap in our communities to understand where the need exactly is.
A gap it hopes to fill through an app called FoodLink, which connects food suppliers with nonprofits. Food banks request items that they need, and volunteers will then be assigned to deliver them.
This is something that has not been there yet and will really help community organizations to increase the accessibility and have available food for those who need it.
Food prices across the country are expected to rise by about 7% this year. Researchers say that amounts to about an additional $1,000 spent for each family at a time when many are confronted with higher costs elsewhere.
Unfortunately, there are quite a lot of families that are impacted by higher interest rates and higher food prices at the grocery stores, and the two of them are necessities of life.
This analyst expects costs will climb into July before they potentially level off.
It has a lot to do with the market itself. I mean, we are expecting an economic slowdown. A lot of consumers are also trading down.
A change that likely won't bring prices down, but can hopefully keep them from going even higher. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Critics say it is time the BC government warms up to free air conditioners. A recommendation from a coroner's review panel looking into the deadly 2021 heat dome. More than 600 people died in BC during that deadly summer heat wave. More than 2/3 of them didn't have air conditioning and lived in poorly ventilated spaces. The next year, the panel recommended the province consider giving air conditioners to people in need. The government was asked to complete a review and publish it last December. That still hasn't been done. Health Ministry staff say the province is finalizing a report on the issue and claim it's been delayed so that they can ensure it was thorough. No word yet when it might be released. The BC government is spending $100 million to help protect BC's freshwater supply in partnership with Indigenous people.
For far too long, too many have taken our abundant freshwater resources for granted. And the hard reality is for far too many watersheds in British Columbia, they are facing significant challenges that require us to take a more ambitious, more strategic approach to ensure their sustainability for future generations.
The money will be invested in a watershed security fund co-managed by a group which includes members from the province and BC First Nations. It will be used to maintain and restore watersheds and wetlands. The annual homelessness count for Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley starts tomorrow. It is the first real-time data collected since the COVID-19 pandemic began. As Janella Hamilton explains, advocates worry the struggles to find affordable housing will push those numbers way up.
Little care packages with a granola bar, a scarf, socks.
Ed Grift and Shelley Stout are outreach workers with the Union Gospel Mission. Almost every day, the duo packs this van full of food and clothing donations before setting out to deliver the items to the most vulnerable across the Fraser Valley.
Typically on a day, we'll see, like the other day, we saw 65 people.
The Homelessness Services Association of BC did their last count in 2020, and they saw close to 900 people in the Fraser Valley unhoused. The outreach team says since then, they've seen more people living in bushes, under bridges, and by train tracks.
And they've noticed that there's been an increase in people experiencing homelessness here in the Fraser Valley, especially among youth and seniors.
Clay Lauder has been living on and off the streets since he moved to Mission 5 years ago.
There's young people here, and they're like 19 years old, 20 years old, and they deserve a shot.
The BC Coroner Service says close to 250 people experiencing homelessness died in 2021, a steep 75% spike over the number of lives lost in 2020. This woman says she's been searching for safe, affordable housing for months, often feeling like she has no place to go.
Then, you don't have good credit? Yeah, credit or criminal record, and then they don't want to rent you, right?
And with shelter spaces limited, this man says he's seen a lot of new people traveling from community to community looking for a warm place to sleep.
Like you've seen grown men cry, right? Because it's so cold and it's hard to watch.
And even if they can secure shelter space, for some, they feel living outdoors in isolation is a safer option.
All the fighting and stuff always, right? No privacy. You know, everybody's always arguing with everybody else, right? And a lot of thieving going around.
It's not one thing, it's many things, many barriers that they're facing. So it's like, I don't know, Ed and I just come alongside them and meet them where they're at, and we come from a lens of love and compassion.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Smiling face today.
Oh, I'm always smiling.
Because I've met a lot of people that are, you know, they're great. They had a job and they had a place to live, and then all of a sudden all it takes is one little hiccup, and then it drops you down again, and look at the price it costs to live here.
Advocates say the homeless count is about so much more than just numbers. It's about gaining an accurate understanding of who is living without housing, the reasons behind that, and what supports are needed.
We count people because people count. Every person has value.
Teams of volunteers will be combing through BC communities starting March 7th and 8th, and data will be collected until early May. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Mission.
The reality is that for some folks, they don't necessarily want to be in the system.
More on BC's plan to offer free prescription birth control and some concerns. That story is next. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. In New Brunswick, curlers recently took to the ice to compete in a 120-year-old tournament. The Strathcona Cup has seen Scottish and Canadian curlers travel to each other's respective countries every 5 years to continue the long tradition of friendly competition.
So today it's called the Strathcona Cup. It's an event that's been going on for over 100 years. And the event, basically the program, the format is that there's 15 Scottish teams here in Canada and 15 Canadian teams. And they're divided into three areas, so the East Coast, Central, and the West Coast. And so they play matches at different curling clubs in the different areas, and the scoring is across the board. So total score for Scotland across Canada, total score for Canada across Canada, and whoever ends up with the highest score at the end of the tour gets the Strathcona Cup.
It's a very historic competition. It's the oldest international curling competition in the world between obviously the two premier curling countries. And so it's got that tradition going back 120 years, and I think it's important that we maintain that. And every 10 years Scotland comes across here, and in the intervening 5 years Canada come to Scotland. So it's an ongoing thing. It's like you feel you're handing on a baton. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's great to come to Canada at this time of year. The ice in all the rinks that we've played has been fantastic. Your ice techs are really good, and it's very consistent. So yeah, it's great. It is a once in a lifetime thing.
I gotta say, Happy Burns Day, Robbie Burns Day.
Robbie Burns Day is today, yes. So we're expecting haggis, neeps, and tatties tonight, and we'll probably have to do, we will want to do some poetry from Robbie Burns and stories. So yeah, it should be a good night.
BC will soon be the first jurisdiction in Canada to offer free prescription birth control. Advocates say while it's a big step forward in access, there could be concerns over how it is rolling out. Yasmin Gandam explains.
That purchasing contraception before with your own money meant that you weren't tracked in any kind of system.
Options for Sexual Health is a nonprofit that works to eliminate barriers people face in accessing sexual health education. They're concerned that people who weren't previously tracked in a system will now be forced into it.
So people's identifiers will go into a system to kind of help the government understand how much money they're spending on contraception. But the reality is that for some folks, they don't necessarily want to be in the system.
But it's still welcome news for those who have been fighting for it for so long.
We were elated because we've been advocating for free, universally accessible contraception in the province for many years.
Starting April 1st, contraception will be free to all BC residents. This includes oral hormone pills, injections, IUDs, and Plan B, also known as the morning after pill.
We've really worked for a long time from a perspective of reproductive justice, which is to empower communities of color, women, gender diverse people around their needs with respect to reproduction and contraception. So this it creates space for more autonomy and more opportunity.
McDougall adds for women in abusive relationships, access is even more of a challenge.
We're talking about racialized survivors of violence experience in the sense of how much economic abuse happens in a relationship. And so this potentially removes that impact.
The province says residents covered by MSP will initially need to take a prescription from a family doctor to a pharmacist to have the prescription filled starting in April.
Pharmacists are going to be authorized to prescribe them as well, making the access easier in that way.
It will not be restricted by age, but the hope is that enough information is provided so that folks are able to access it.
And that information is targeted and tailored for Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities in British Columbia.
In BC, the pill can cost at least $240 a year. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live look at the Georgia Viaduct and a bit of downtown. Johanna will have your BC-wide forecast. Almost spring-like? Possibly. That's next.
A disturbing question has been raised about Canadians and their private mail. Just how private is it? For years, customs officials have had the right to open mail coming into the country. But now it's been revealed some of that mail is being copied and the information stored in a government database. Terry Malewski has the story.
It's been legal since 1992 for customs officers to open mail if they suspect a violation of any Canadian law. But it turns out now they're not just looking for contraband like drugs. They're also opening mail to lawyers like Elizabeth Bryson. These packages were sent by a client in Hong Kong applying for immigration, and they were all opened by customs. Bryson believes the contents were copied into a government database, even though no criminal activity is even alleged.
If they don't have to have a good reason, are we still living in a free and democratic society, or are we living in a police state?
Bryson says her client's confidentiality was breached without the government having to give any reason. Another lawyer, Richard Kurland, got hold of an internal government manual on mail opening, which he sees as a license for official snooping.
It's a blank check to go on a fishing expedition whenever they want and for whomever they want. No controls, no reporting requirement, and no conditions on when and how mail can be opened. That's wrong. That exists nowhere in our Western democratic world.
The government admits that information is copied and filed in a government database.
If we know that it goes against immigration legislation, we just refer to the department concerned, and then they have to deal with it. It's just a question to protect our society.
But the Federal Privacy Commissioner sees it differently.
Obviously, opening people's mail, particularly on a large scale without benefit of a warrant or a court order, is not a good or attractive thing from a privacy point of view. So we are very actively investigating.
They're looking at the mail, they're photocopying it, they're putting it in files. That's a violation of people's rights.
All of this came out because a lot of immigration lawyers noticed their mail was being opened, but now they're wondering what other mail is being targeted and copied and shared with who knows who. The problem, they say, is not that it's illegal, but that it's legal. Terry Malewski, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 30th, join Angela Starrett at the Alumni UBC webinar on Indigenous youth, nurturing the next generation. Hear from 3 Indigenous speakers who mentor Indigenous youth to share knowledge in their communities and beyond. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and never miss an episode of your favorite CBC drama or comedy with the free CBC Gem app. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
Do you remember that time a cat and an eagle decided to fight?
For a while, they calmed down, and I thought they might actually get along. But the eagle sort of puffed itself up and did a bit of a bluff charge or two. There sort of was a stalemate, a bit of a stalemate. But after a few minutes, the eagle decided that it had enough and wanted to take off.
Oh boy. Pete Davidson was at an East Vancouver playground with his son on the weekend when he says the eagle swooped down, catching the cat's eye. Things got a little tense, as you can see, but eventually the eagle flew the coop.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Time for a BC-wide weather forecast on the beginning of a new week. Joe, word on the street is we're getting close to that time when it's not winter.
Dan?
Can you clarify?
I can confirm we are getting closer to the spring equinox. And you know what? Technically, we are in meteorological spring, which started March 1st.
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, that was kind of on the down low. And officially, there's still snow on the ground. But it kind of, dare I say, felt a little spring-like Sunday into today. So just put it out there that, we're just a few weeks away. The weather still very winter-like across much of BC as far as temperatures and the snow on the ground. And another week, another swirling low sitting off our coast. But temperatures are just that much warmer this week than last week, not looking at the same amount of snow through the overnights that we saw last week. Also wanted to show you this blank map of the watches, warnings, and special weather statements in place across BC. First time in a while that we are clear, so some quiet weather for everyone. Now I am tracking a few showers overnight. Again, that pinwheel off the coast, bringing a few showers in through tomorrow. I think we'll see lots of sunshine, just pausing you 6 p.m. tomorrow, lots of sun through the afternoon, but look for a few spits and spots. And all of those bands of showers will sort of come up from the south and exit through the north. Again, with this spinning low that sort of meanders off the coast for most of the week. And so whenever we get these spins in our atmosphere, it's always hard to nail down who and where exactly those showers happen. But the good news is it's not a lot of anything in the week to come. Lots of sunshine through the interior Kelowna. I know it was so nice to see that sun for you today. Look for it again tomorrow. We'll see some more sun in Vancouver the next couple of days. A little wetter for the end of the week and a little warmer as we head into the weekend. Seasonals for this time of the year for YVR are around 10. So we're just starting to flirt with that as we head into the end of the week. Although we'll have to get through some, dare I say, spring showers.
Oh
for the
my.
Weekend.
Seasonal spring showers.
Seasonal spring, yes.
Things are changing.
Surprise.
Maybe. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
And that is your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a good one.